Saturday, 15 August 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. 11 central banks in the EMEAP group met in Singapore on 23 July and formally named dependence on a small number of AI and cloud providers as a systemic risk to financial stability. The group, which spans the Reserve Bank of Australia, Bank of Japan, People's Bank of China, Bank of Korea, and 7 other Asia-Pacific monetary authorities, also warned that concentrated AI supply chains could amplify cross-border contagion across the region's banking sector. The only binding output was a memorandum between the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the Bank of Thailand on cyber and digital fraud cooperation. Why it matters, the statement puts AI vendor concentration on the formal agenda of Asia's most senior financial regulators. But none of the 11 members currently operates an inspection regime equivalent to Britain's new critical third-party oversight of AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft, and Oracle. That gap is the story. Builders selling AI infrastructure into Asian banks should expect procurement teams to start asking harder questions about redundancy, portability, and exit clauses well before any regulation lands. Capital allocators watching the hyperscaler trade need to track whether EMEAP members move toward mandatory concentration limits or interoperability standards. Bank Indonesia hosts the next governors' meeting in 2027, which sets the earliest realistic window for coordinated action. So Taipei's Foxconn, the world's largest electronics contract manufacturer, reported that cloud and networking revenue crossed 51% of total sales in the second quarter, surpassing consumer electronics for the first time in the company's history. Hanhai posted quarterly revenue of NT 2.53 trillion, up 41% year-on-year, with record operating and net profit for the period. Net profit of roughly NT 60 billion beat the LSEG analyst consensus by about 2%, confirming that AI server assembly has displaced the iPhone as the company's primary revenue engine. Why it matters, Foxconn's crossover point reframes how capital allocators should model the company, and by extension, the broader AI hardware supply chain running through Taiwan. Rotating CEO Michael Chiang expects full-year AI server shipments to double and U.S. cloud capital spending to pass $1 trillion by 2027, which means Foxconn's exposure to hyperscaler budgets now outweighs its dependence on any single consumer device cycle. Management flagged advanced packaging capacity in Taiwan, not final assembly, as the binding constraint, a signal that upstream bottlenecks at TSMC's CoWoS lines will set the pace for AI infrastructure build-out across the region. Builders and procurement teams planning rack-scale deployments should watch packaging lead times more closely than assembly slots. Now, Delhi's power ministry told Parliament that AI data centers will add 26.3 gigawatts of load by 2031 to 2032, nearly doubling the 13.56 gigawatt forecast it gave just 4 months earlier in March. India's operational data center capacity today sits at roughly 1,575 megawatts, against industry projections of 12 gigawatts by 2030. Google has already broken ground on a 1 gigawatt campus at VZAC Patnam as part of a $15 billion 5-year commitment, making it one of the largest single-site bets anywhere in Asia. Why it matters, the binding constraint is not national generation capacity. It is transmission and connection sequencing at the state level. Builders planning campuses in Telangana, Maharashtra, or Andhra Pradesh need to treat announced megawatts and energized megawatts as two fundamentally different numbers. State electricity boards control substation upgrades, right-of-way approvals, and interconnection timelines, and none of those move at the speed Delhi's headline figures imply. Capital allocators pricing Indian AI infrastructure plays should stress-test project timelines against state grid readiness, not central generation targets. The second-order effect worth tracking: if connection bottlenecks persist, hyperscalers may consolidate around the 2 or 3 states that can actually deliver power on schedule, concentrating capacity rather than distributing it. That is your AI in Asia briefing for today. Stay sharp, build well, see you tomorrow.